Hi, this is V, and I have bipolar. This is my great friend Mina, who also has bipolar. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships, our experiences, and also what we kind of want out of relationships in regard to our illness. So, Mina, how do you want a partner to relate to this part of your life?
I want them to, well, hopefully a person doesn't have to relate to a bunch of trauma and inconsistencies in their mood. I mean, I would hope nobody has to relate to that, but sometimes they do. And I think when it comes to choosing a partner, while like we're going to talk about practicality in doing that, I don't think we always end up with somebody that is practical and that's biochemical. If you are acting practically and are able to decide whether this person is good for you or not, you're in that situation, as I have found myself in before. I consider a couple of things. Something I really consider are my moods and how I can't prepare for them, and I can't prepare my relationship for them, and I can't prepare somebody else for them. So I have to think about how we'll work through it together. And I can't do that alone. It takes two to tango. I can't tell somebody how they feel or know how they think all the time. So you and I are talking about this from our own perspective. But obviously, in a relationship, I would have this conversation with the other person. But overall, I want a person to support me when my moods aren't an issue and when they are. And I
Hmm.
want them to do that by recognizing my personality and recognizing my moods, because a mood disorder doesn't dictate my life. It's not on the forefront of everything. It's not something I wake up and plan around. I want it to not be a factor in everything I do. I really want it to be a small part of my relationship. And I kind of just want them to be able to hang when it happens and also look out for me, have my back.
Right. I think that's an important distinction. Yeah, it's not a part of my everyday life, every instant. There are days where I don't think about it, and there's so many other parts to a relationship. But when I do have an episode or when I'm just really down and it's beyond normal or really up, I want there to be some level of understanding and support, and if there isn't, it quickly ends a relationship. Like, I had a short relationship where I wound up being hospitalized and the person didn't even seem to be concerned about it or ask about it, and that obviously just ended the relationship. I want something better than that. But then I don't want someone who is obsessing over it and getting really worried about it and telling me I need to have my phone on me all the time, and they need constant updates either. So, what kind of support do you want from someone when you are having an episode or having some amount of symptoms from bipolar?
That's an important question. And easy to say now when I'm not in that situation, but I don't need somebody to understand what it's like to be bipolar. And I don't expect most people to. I mean, you and I don't even have the same experiences. It's most important that a person tries to understand as much as they can. And you mentioned the person who really didn't seem to make an effort when you went to the hospital at all. They just didn't even try to understand what happened to you or what landed you there, right?
Right.
So if a person has never known anybody with a mood disorder or it's never been something they've had to deal with, that being new to somebody is a big change. And I wouldn't expect somebody to be able to hop right in and be everything I need them to be in that moment. That's always my first mistake in a relationship when shit goes down, is that I expect them to be this perfect person, and that's never going to happen. But I do expect them to try. I don't think that's asking too much. Yeah. Yeah. So making an effort is really all I expect out of a person.
So, from my perspective, an effort, yes, an effort. But an effort is a constant kind of thing. Like at the very beginning, yes, I want just, okay, I have a little bit of concern, or I care a little bit. And then, as a relationship evolves, I want that person to keep putting in a little bit of effort. Like obviously I'm going to put in a constant effort to understand them and support them in every area of their life that I kind of can, and that doesn't hurt me to do so. And I want them to continue to do that, especially when bipolar does become a big part of my life. It isn't all the time, but when I'm in the middle of a depressive or a manic episode, it's kind of huge. And I want them to keep learning and keep communicating. I think a big problem that I've run into is when the other person doesn't tell me what they're thinking until it becomes unavoidable. Like they're feeling uncomfortable about my behavior as I'm going up, and it turns into this thing where they didn't talk about it early on, so then they keep not talking about it, and suddenly it's deceit or things are being hidden, and it kind of explodes, which kind of happened when I was hospitalized and my partner didn't really tell me what he was thinking about it, and then told a different thing to the doctors, and that caused a huge amount of resentment that lasted a long time. So basically just that communication. I want a sustained effort to try to be the best we can be with this going on.
And maybe that should be the baseline here of any relationship, mood disorder or not. A little bit about me is my value in a relationship, my biggest value is autonomy and independence. I don't think that my significant other should be my only source of support. You know, I should be able to get that from everybody. So the support they give me, it's an important component of our relationship, but it should be healthy and it should satisfy both of our needs. I want to be able to support them in the same way. Two significant experiences for me have been with one person who had no background in mental health. So dealing with my mood disorder and being a part of my life was a shock to them. And they were incredible through the whole thing. They were always supportive, and it was like they never understood, and they accepted that. They accepted that they would never understand, but they were just always there. They would understand medication, and they would just keep up on what I was working on in therapy. They were a part of it despite not understanding. And another significant experience I had with a different person who did understand. We could talk about it, but they weren't a blind support. I would have to reach out for them to be like, hey, I'm actually needing help right now. I would have to communicate where I was in my mind. Whereas this other person just assumed I always needed help. I didn't have to ask for it. Again, one isn't always better than the other. My connection with the person who was, would I say, my kind of crazy, we were so in tune that they were kind of able to recognize when my moods were overpowering my personality, probably. So yeah, those are two of my major views. I think while people are more complex than that, usually I find that a person can have a full understanding of mental illness and maybe even a mood disorder and not be a good support. And also they can have no understanding and be a great support. I've had both experiences.
Yeah, I've had one relationship where the other person had a manic episode or something very much like it, had been hospitalized. And when I was hospitalized, and there was a little discomfort because I was making bad decisions. I was getting a little obsessive and overly attached to them and texting them all the time. And they told me to stop for a week, and I didn't. I started calling them instead because my manic mind was like, oh, that's okay. And yeah, that's really obnoxious and that's overstepping boundaries. But their response to that was to completely cut things off, to threaten a restraining order if I didn't stop contacting them. And I didn't talk to them again. I thought maybe forever, but a year later, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, just because you've been through it doesn't mean you're going to be compassionate. I think for some people, they know how hard it is and they don't have the energy, or maybe it's triggering for them. But I'm interested in asking you what you think the benefits are to being with someone who doesn't have a background in it. If you could just say a little more about that, like someone who doesn't really understand the illness and doesn't have experience themselves. Like, what do they bring that someone who does have those experiences doesn't bring?
Yeah, there's quite a few pros to being with somebody who, I guess I won't say neurotypical, or I don't know, without mood disorder. They kind of bring a sense of normalcy to your life, and it's so easy to feel disconnected from people when, whether or not you've accepted it, you'll always be a little bit different when your mind is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was with a person who is very neurotypical, it was a little bit of a relief. It allowed me to kind of get out of my own head and slow down a little bit. And then another really, really great thing about him was that I didn't have to ask for help. And that's particular to me, I think, because I don't ask for help. Something I'm actively working on. But that's always been a struggle for me. And also recognizing when I need help, because I have a tendency to compensate like an infant, compensate until I crash, so it's nice to be taken care of. And again, I value my autonomy, my independence. So I don't like to think that I'm a person who needs to be taken care of 24/7, but it's fine. Who doesn't like to be taken care of? So those are two huge things for me that I really appreciate in a person like that. There's also downsides to a person who is blindly supportive, and they can be a little overbearing. It's nice to be taken care of and for them to, always wonder how are your meds doing? How's your mood? But sometimes they can confuse my personality with a mood.
Right.
We all have moods. Everybody does.
Yeah.
It's Monday and I hate my boss. I'm fighting with my friend and I'm being a huge bitch. I'm not heading down any moody path. I'm just having a Monday, like we all do.
Right.
And they can overreact. And so that can be a day-to-day, week-to-week struggle with that kind of partner. There's also long-term struggles, I think, that can be related to resentment. They could begin to resent me for constantly having to take care of me, and not receiving the kind of attention in return because they just don't need it as much as I do.
Right.
And also, I could end up resenting that person because, in my experience, I felt like my partner who was like this kind of enabled me. They babied me, and it was like I could fuck up any amount of times and they would pick me back up and they would forgive me because they had to, right? Those you have to watch out for. They're avoidable and you can work through them, but in my mind, they're definitely something you have to consider when going into a relationship with somebody like that.
That's a lot to unpack. I think a lot of what you were talking about and like how much they're there for all your needs and how much they're asking maybe did you take your meds, or is this a mood? Like I've had that where I'm having a good day for once in a long time and they're like, oh, do you think you're getting manic? And I'm just like a little bit happy and cooking for myself or laughing, and it's like, come on. But I think the real key is communication, which neither person can do on their own. And I also, autonomy, it's a value of mine. It hasn't always been. At one point in my life, I really wanted to be basically a unit with someone and do pretty much everything together. But I've learned more and more that I do a lot better when I am my own person, and it gives me more confidence in everything. With bipolar, having that communication and saying like, I feel uncomfortable when you try to support me in this way. It's not actually meeting any of my needs. And for the other person to kind of hear that, and even if they can't stop being anxious about it themselves right away, to realize that maybe they can limit how much feedback they're giving you in that area, or you can have specific times. I was trying to think of what the last thing you said was.
The resentment and the enablement.
Right, yeah. I have never been in a relationship where the other person was really going to forgive me every single time. I had one where they really cut it off, basically first time. And then I had another one where, yes, we're still friends, but the repeated times of me getting manic and having my filters kind of disappear and all the nasty things that I'd ever thought basically come out, because that's something some people have happen when they're manic. They get irritable, and I find, especially if I have things that I've been just trying to avoid talking about with someone, they come out. So those things I said were very hurtful, and I wouldn't say they were abusive or anything, but we could never recover from it. And I was married to this person, and we're now getting divorced. So I've never had someone who really was going to just accept anything. And I think I value that. I want the other person to have boundaries. I do want to worry about the other person's well-being, but I also want to feel confident that they're going to protect themselves to some degree as well. Because it's the reality that I am not going to make good decisions. I'm going to do my best when I'm manic, but there's going to be things that I regret. And I need the other person to know that. And I hope that the other person will tell me, this is getting to be too much for me. And in that situation, I'd be happy to go and stay with a parent or a friend or something until I came down. The resentment sucks. It's when I most want to be able to kind of telepathically make the other person understand what it was like to be in that state of mind when I made that shitty decision that hurt the other person, that I feel awful about. I was there, but at the same time, typical me never would have done what I did. Yeah, I don't know what the real solution is there to getting to a place where there isn't a whole lot of resentment, but at the same time, the other person is not just forgiving you for everything that you do.
Right. And then that's just goes into choosing your partner no matter what. I mean, you have to be compatible in all the other ways that people become compatible. It's not just about, you can't just choose a person based off how they handle the mood disorder. That's not even a little bit of it.
No.
Yeah, it's way more complex than that. You should get along with somebody in all areas.
Right. I mean, I think this conversation is useful for, some red flags, but it's more what to kind of ask for early on in the relationship. Not date 1, 2, 3, but, as a month or two in, like whenever this comes up, to slowly be like, these are kind of my expectations. It's kind of having a plan. Like, this is what I would like from you if this happens, and these are the things that really wouldn't be helpful for me, in just kind of getting ahead of it. And I think that takes experience, and unfortunately I don't think you can do that no matter how many videos or books you read before you have your first or second episode. You're not gonna know what to ask for. But I think having those conversations can prevent some of this resentment, no matter what. You're having a relationship for totally different reasons with this person. This is not, oh, you're bipolar, so your relationships need to be dictated by who's going to be your best caregiver. No. But I think this is important to be able to communicate your needs and your kind of expectations.
Yeah, and you can't plan for this. There's no rubric. It's really a case by case thing. But that being said, I do have my preferences, especially having had different experiences. And, I'm still very much a youth, so I will have many more experiences. But I do have some preferences. And I think at this point, I would prefer that my partner not be a yes man, and maybe have some understanding or experience personally with mental health. I don't think I would be with another bipolar person. I'm not so into that, but definitely somebody who has their also has I have a big personality, so I'd like that person to have their own personality, and I want us both to look out for ourselves, and I would like to be able to ask for help when I need it, and I would like them to be able to ask for help when I need it. But I really want somebody who's going to ride the wave with me, and I don't want moods to be a daily topic. I want somebody who I have such a good connection with that they recognize my personality first, and my mood second or third or fourth or not at all. I really think that there are people out there that are so compatible that this doesn't have to be even a big conversation. And again, that's, not practical always, but I definitely, I don't want to be in a situation where there's a disconnect in terms of supporting one another. So if I am with somebody who struggles with their own mental health, I don't want to feel like their needs are being ignored, and I don't want to feel like my needs are being ignored. So because I have those preferences, it's really, really important that I establish good communication and trust with that person, because I totally get in my own head. Like I can a little bit be that person that you mentioned that has their own shit to deal with, so they don't want to deal with other people's. I am absolutely guilty of that. So, we learn to work with other people's limitations.
So I think we covered most of what we wanted to say. I don't think there's anything really specific that I have left. How about you?
No, I think we answered all the questions, and we've solved it.
We solved it.
We solved it.
Who the perfect man is, or woman, or non-binary friend. So thank you very much for doing this conversation with me. Thank you all of you out there who are watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. And goodbye, my beautiful queer folk, strong neurodivergent friends too, and all of you allies, brazen and free, so long and blessed be.